You are literally trading your life energy, hours and days and years of your one precious life to produce value for others. You're giving the best hours of your day, you're giving your creative thinking, your problem solving abilities, your relationship skills. You're trading your life force to create benefit for an organization and its customers. And that trade should honor your humanity. It should energize you, not drain you. It should allow you to grow, contribute meaningfully, and feel genuinely satisfied with how you're spending your days. When we accept that miserable, unproductive workplaces are just the way it is, we're essentially saying that trading our life energy for dysfunction is normal and should be treated as such. We're saying that our time, our life, isn't valuable enough to demand better. And I just reject that premise entirely. Welcome. You're listening to This Leader, the podcast. If you lead people and are seeking the transformational, high-impact secrets that will lead to greater joy and fulfillment in your work, will optimize your team performance, and will help you create a happy, highly productive workplace, then you are this leader and you're in the right place. I'm your host, Claire Laughlin, and each week my guests and I will explore the mindsets, techniques, and actionable strategies that will help you build the career, team, and organization of your dreams. Because I believe no one should have to suffer in a dysfunctional workplace. Let's get started. Hi there. Welcome to This Leader. I'm going to start today with something that might make you a little uncomfortable. Okay? I hope not, but I'm going to make a very bold claim that flies in the face of some of our conventional workplace wisdom. You ready? You have a right, not a privilege, but a right to work in a happy, healthy, and highly productive workplace. Not just productive, not just tolerable, but happy, healthy, and highly productive. Now, I can already hear some of you pushing back a little bit. I know I have in my mind, saying, Claire, that sounds nice, but come on, isn't workplace happiness just a luxury, a perk? Like, not everyone can have their dream job. Let me address that head on. We spend a third of our lives at work. A third, my friend, a third of our lives. And if that environment consistently damages our well being, our health, or our basic dignity, this isn't just about missing out on something that's nice to have. This is a human issue. Now, I'm not talking about ping pong tables and free kombucha for all. I'm talking about basic workplace health and humanity. Things like fairness, respect, psychological safety, having clarity about your role, and the opportunity to do meaningful work that utilizes your strengths. These should be considered basic standards, not bonuses. Just like we treat safety as a basic protected standard and we assert our right to work without being discriminated against, in the same way, we should begin to think about healthy, happy, and highly productive workplaces as a right. And yes, I know what some of you are thinking, but Claire, happiness, that's really subjective. How could any employer guarantee something so personal? And you're right, happiness is subjective. And we've all known people who seem to have sort of every right to be happy, but they're not. Between us, I think it's each individual's responsibility to cultivate their own happiness. But we'll come back to that shortly. My friends, what can be guaranteed, or what I think should be guaranteed, are the conditions that support human thriving at work. Things like fair treatment, regardless of who you are, clear expectations so you know how to succeed, consistent communication so you have the information you need to produce your finest work, respect for your time and your contributions, opportunities for growth and development, and work that has meaning and impact. And furthermore, leaders who model integrity. Now, I'm not asking organizations to make everyone feel fuzzy inside every day. And frankly, I'm not asking for new regulations or laws or anything. I'm just asking organizations, leaders, all of us to take ownership and really step into the accountability to create environments where people can bring their best selves to work without fear confusion, or undue stress. And for all of you that might be thinking, gosh, this sounds really idealistic, Claire, and probably expensive, let me share something with you. What's actually really expensive is burnout, turnover, disengagement, and lost productivity. We've talked about this on the podcast before. The organizations that are thriving, the ones that are profitable and sustainable, already treat healthy, high functioning culture as a foundational part of doing business, not optional. You are literally trading your life energy, hours and days and years of your one precious life to produce value for others. You're giving the best hours of your day. You're giving your creative thinking, your problem solving abilities, your relationship skills. You're trading your life force to create benefit for an organization and its customers. And that trade should honor your humanity. It should energize you, not drain you. It should allow you to grow, contribute meaningfully, and feel genuinely satisfied with how you're spending your days. When we accept that miserable, unproductive workplaces are, just the way it is, we're essentially saying that trading our life energy for dysfunction is normal and should be treated as such. We're saying that our time, our life, isn't valuable enough to demand better. And I just reject that premise entirely. But whose job is it? Well, here's where this gets really interesting and where the real transformation happens. Because thinking about this as a right is a good place to start, but it's not enough. Rights without responsibility are just complaints. And that's what I really want to talk about today. Here's what I've learned after nearly 30 years of working with leaders and teams. We can't just claim our right to a happy and highly productive workplace and then sit back and wait for someone else to deliver it. Different people have different roles in creating these conditions. And with those roles come very specific responsibilities. Let me break this down into 3 key roles that exist in every organization, and you're playing 1, 2, or even 3 of all of these roles. First, the owner role. An owner may be an actual owner, like someone who's invested their own time, money, and resources to start or acquire a business or organization. Or an owner might be someone who's entrusted to guide the organization toward its stated vision and mission, like a CEO or a CAO or other executive of any sort. This owner role, it's about establishing culture and direction, and it's about resource allocation. Next is the manager or leader role. And this role is about establishing expectations and modeling behaviors. It includes providing clarity about how people are expected to treat one another and also about the output that's expected. Finally, there's the producer role. And this is about bringing your best self and contributing excellence. We all produce, right? We all produce something. Every one of us needs to play this role and do our individual best to create the workplace that we want to work in. Now, some of you might be thinking, Claire, I'm just a manager. That's above my pay grade, or I don't own the company, or I'm just an individual contributor. I don't have any formal authority. What do you want from me? And here's the thing. These are roles, not job titles. You can step into leadership without formal authority. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast. You can think like an owner, even if you don't own the business and if your title does not include the word executive. So let me walk you through the responsibilities that I see associated with each role. Hi there. I am so excited to share this episode with you today because we have been at this podcasting thing for many months now, and this is quickly becoming one of my favorite ways to communicate with you, my fellow leaders. But I got to ask you something. Can you help me grow this podcast? If you haven't done so yet, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And share this with a friend. Your referrals are always appreciated, and it's a great way to grow our reach. If you like what we're doing here, leave me a comment and a 5-star review. That will help us get noticed and get the word out. And as always, if you have suggestions or topics you'd like me to cover, send me an email at support at clairelaughlin.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Let's start with the owner mindset. If you're thinking like an owner, again, whether you actually own the business or not, then your responsibility is to orient everyone's energy toward both happiness and productivity, not one, not the other, but both. Most organizations miss the mark on this. They think, we need to be productive. And if people happen to be happy along the way, that's a bonus. But here's what an owner committed to this kind of thinking recognizes. Happy workplaces are more productive. When people feel valued, when they're doing meaningful work with people they respect, when they have clarity about how to contribute at their best, they naturally perform at higher levels. Conversely, when you focus only on productivity without considering the human experience, you create environments where people do the minimum, resist change, and eventually leave. So the owner's responsibility is to think directionally about creating conditions where both dimensions thrive, productivity and the happiness dimension. Let's move on to the leader or manager role. And that's about establishing clear expectations and protecting a positive culture. So whether you manage one person or 100 people, if you influence others, you're in a leader role. And your responsibility is to establish expectations around both happiness and high performance. This means providing context so people understand why their work matters, creating clarity about what excellent performance looks like, modeling the energy and engagement that you want to see, having hard conversations sometimes, or those great conversations. So basically having conversations about what's working and sometimes what's not, and addressing issues before they erode relationships and erode the positive culture. I was working with a director recently who told me without hesitation that her team was very productive, but had no energy, no ownership over their work, and no sense of camaraderie. Hey, she said, they get their work done. But when we dug deeper, this director realized that she'd been so focused on work process and hitting deadlines that she didn't really talk about the why behind the work or the positive impact that the team's work was having. She never celebrated or really even acknowledged progress. They just moved from one completed task to the next, to the start of the next. And she just kind of rolled from one demand to the next. She didn't really know her team members or what was energizing or draining them. So after our conversation, she just started having short talks with each team member and asking them, hey, what's one thing you accomplished this past week? And what's one thing you're excited to work on next week? And even those tiny conversations started to transform the energy of her team in a very short time. That's leader level responsibility in action. That leader, she just had to pay attention and try something. And when she did, she started to understand how her leadership can make such an impact. Okay, now let's talk about the responsibilities associated with being a producer. It's all about bringing your best to work. And here's where personal responsibility really kicks in. In the producer role, and we all play this role regardless of our position because we're all producing something, our responsibility is to bring our best selves to work. And this means showing up with positive energy, not fake positivity, but genuine engagement. Being curious enough to ask questions when you're unclear and to get involved. It involves speaking up and being solution oriented when something isn't working instead of just complaining. And it means knowing and working to your strengths as much as possible and having honest conversations about your development and what you can contribute. And here's the part that might really challenge you. If you're in a workplace that is persistently neither happy nor productive, and you've really tried all these things and you've tried to influence it positively, then your responsibility might be to leave. I know that sounds harsh, and some people don't feel the freedom to move around like that, but staying in a toxic environment and just enduring it actually enables that toxicity to continue in some ways. When good people tolerate bad workplaces, those workplaces never feel the pressure to change, and it will grind you down. Your life energy is too valuable to waste in environments that consistently drain you and produce poor results. I know many people, like I said, they don't necessarily feel the freedom to make change. So I really only recommend this strategy after you've really tried to make a difference. And if you feel strongly that nothing will shift. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So let's assess, where does your workplace land? Here's what I want you to do. Grab a piece of paper and draw a line down the center and a line across the middle. You've just made yourself a 2x2 matrix. I'm going to ask you to step back and honestly assess where you and your workplace fall on two dimensions, happiness and productivity. So imagine your up and down axis, right? That's the happiness line. At the top, you'll find the happiest of workplaces, and at the bottom, that's where the most toxic workplaces reside. On the horizontal axis, left to right, is the productivity line. And on the right side is high productivity. You know, those organizations that really knock it out of the park and get things done. And on the left are organizations with low productivity. Though make no mistake, those organizations can be very busy, but that doesn't mean that they're productive. When you look at this 2x2, you'll want to live in the top right quadrant. That's the place where happiness and high productivity reside. This is the sweet spot. People here are energized, engaged, and delivering excellent results. And that's what we're aiming for. In the top left quadrant, you'll find the high happiness but low productivity quadrant. These organizations feel good in the short term, but they are unsustainable. Without results, organizations can't survive. People might be having fun, but they're not growing or making a meaningful impact. Below that, just like bottom left, you're going to find low happiness and low productivity. This is the danger zone. It's toxic and ineffective. People are miserable here, and nothing meaningful is really getting accomplished. These organizations can't last long, and if you've ever been in one, you know what I'm talking about. Finally, in the bottom right quadrant, we find the low happiness but high productivity quadrant. This is a sort of a grind it out kind of environment. Results are happening, but people are suffering. People are burning out, turnover is high, and it's only a matter of time before productivity tanks. So, which quadrant does your workplace fall into? And more importantly, which quadrant do you contribute to? Because here's the crucial part. I don't want you to just assess your organization. I want you to assess your contribution in both areas, happiness and productivity. Are you taking ownership? Are you exercising your responsibilities to create a happy and highly productive workplace? I'm going to pose some questions here. So first, to evaluate your own happiness contribution, ask yourself, are you bringing positive energy to your interactions at work? Are you working to your strengths? Are you building supportive, mutually beneficial relationships? Are you speaking up about the good stuff, like celebrating the wins and speaking up about what's not working? Are you working on self-awareness and self-management so you can really manage your stress and show up at your best? That's some food for thought for you, okay? To evaluate your productivity contribution, ask yourself these questions. Are you clear about your role and how to make your best contribution? And if not, are you working to clarify it? I have a little resource for that. If you're not clear, it's called Role Clarity. Are you having the right conversations with the right people in a timely manner? Are you focused on really managing your time and your focus so that you can work in that high impact area and create high impact output? Are you continuously improving your skills and your approach? Are you personally dedicated to your own development and growth? If you're falling short in either area, your happiness area or your productivity area, that's where your responsibility lies. You can't control everything about your workplace, but you can control your contribution to it. And if you're recognizing that you're in that danger zone, you know, the low happiness and low productivity, Let me share a few early warning signs that you might actually be in a toxic workplace and it might be time to take action. I want you to watch for these red flags. First, information hoarding. When key information is withheld or it's only shared with selected people within an organization, that can make your job a lot harder. A blame culture, like when things go wrong, the focus seems to be on finding who's to blame rather than on fixing the problem. Inconsistent messaging. Here's what that means. Leaders say one thing, but they model something different. You know you're in that workplace when, there's posters about the values on the wall, but they seem very hypocritical. Chronic overwhelm is another sign, and that's when everyone is always in crisis mode, putting out fires instead of preventing them. When gossip is used as communication, or like people learn important information through rumors rather than official channels, or when people try to influence others by spreading rumors. Yikes, you got to watch out for that. Lack of psychological safety is a big one, of course. You know this if you feel afraid or you notice that others are afraid to ask questions or admit mistakes or share ideas, that indicates low psychological safety. And finally, high turnover. When you see a lot of turnover, and especially when good people keep leaving, that's a problem. So if you're seeing multiple signs like these, you're likely in an environment that really needs to change. But before you update that resume of yours, you have a responsibility to try to influence positive change. So rather than bounce from job to job, let's talk about positive ways that you can influence change. And I'm going to give you 7 different activities. So here's a few strategies that actually work. First, start with relationships. Build trust with 1 or 2 colleagues who also want things to improve and want to do it in positive ways. Change rarely happens in isolation. 2, focus on solutions, not complaints. Instead of saying things like, this team never communicates, try something different like, hey, I'd like to propose that we start doing brief Monday check ins to align our priorities, right? Be solution oriented. Number 3, remember, support any claims that you need to make with data, not just emotions. So saying something like, I've noticed our project timelines are slipping by an average of 2 weeks. That's data driven. And it's much more powerful than saying something like, everything feels so chaotic, which may be true, but try to land on the data. Number 4, make small proposals. Like, don't try to fix everything at once and don't throw everything in the kitchen sink at your manager. Suggest one specific improvement at a time and make it easy to say yes to it. 5, find allies in the leadership ranks. Look for managers or directors who seem open to feedback and approach them thoughtfully with your ideas. Show them that they have your support. And if your manager or your leader does not seem to be that person, please go look for a manager or leader who may be able to listen. Number 6, document your efforts. Keep track of what you've tried, what worked and what didn't. This protects you and it also helps you refine your approach. It also ensures that you're being realistic about how long you've been working toward change because sometimes we feel like we've been at it for a long, long time just because it's hard. So just write down the things that you've tried. Don't forget, however, if you're going to do this, also look for the wins. We don't want to fall prey to like confirmation bias where we're only seeing the things that support our story that we work in a hard workplace or a very toxic or difficult workplace. Finally, number 7, and this is really important, my friends, please model the behavior that you want to see in others. Do the thing that you wish other people would do. And set boundaries when people try to engage you in dysfunctional interactions. You can model better behavior by refusing to participate in gossip, by speaking positively about your colleagues, and by staying focused on solutions. My friends, the key to making change is to be persistent and patient. Real culture change takes time. Give your efforts at least 6 to 9 months and seek other departments or teams within the organization if possible before concluding that this whole organization is not right for me, and also before concluding that change just isn't going to happen. Okay, let's talk about action. Here is my challenge for you this week. First, pick one specific way you can step into greater responsibilities in one of your three roles. Like maybe it's having a conversation with your manager about working more to your strengths. Maybe it's starting team meetings differently to create more connection. Or maybe it's speaking up about a process that's creating unnecessary stress or requesting more clarity on your role. Any of those things can sort of support you taking an ownership, a leader, manager, or a producer mindset. Second, if you're recognizing toxic patterns in your workplace, pick one positive influence strategy from the list I just shared, right? And above, and commit to trying it for the next month. Start small, be consistent, and document what happens. Third, only if you've genuinely tried to create positive change for 6 to 9 months without any movement should you start really developing your exit strategy. This is a guideline, my friends. It really depends on your unique situation. And I am not here to tell you whether you should or shouldn't leave a job, especially if I've never spoken to you about it. But if you follow these guidelines and you really embrace your responsibility to create a positive workplace, I just want you to remember that, your life energy deserves better. And I just want you to make sure that you've really fulfilled your responsibility to try to make things positive before exiting a workplace, especially if you feel like you need to exit and you're sort of on bad terms. Exiting any organization as just a career move is always acceptable and something that you should be working toward. But if you're sort of leaving with this, bad taste in your mouth, just try to remember and look clearly at the situation and know whether you really tried your best to make a change. Finally, I want you to connect with me on social media about this topic. I want to have a conversation about this. I want to hear your thoughts on this idea that workplace happiness and productivity might be rights, not privileges. Are you convinced? Are you willing to come along with me on this? Do you want to jump on board and let's continue the conversation? What questions does this raise for you? And what's your experience been? Find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm at Claire Laughlin Consulting. And let's continue the conversation. Because here's what I know. When we collectively raise our standards for what's acceptable in workplaces, and when we take responsibility for our contribution and make positive shifts, and when we stop tolerating environments that waste our life energy, we can make positive change. You have the right to spend your days in meaningful, energizing, and productive work. But that right comes along with the responsibility to actively create those conditions, starting with yourself. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. And until next week, go lead the way. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about my services and for lots of free resources and additional tools to enrich your journey, visit my website and subscribe to my newsletter at clairelaughlin.com. If you have a question about leadership, teams, or organizational culture you'd like me to address on the podcast, please reach out to me at support@clairelaughlin.com and connect with me on social channels at Claire Laughlin Consulting. Until next time, lead the way.